What happens when institutions start systematically buying up one of the oldest altcoins? Over 1 million Litecoin are currently being strategically accumulated. Treasury strategies, ETF speculation, commodity status by the CFTC. At the same time, the hash rate is reaching a new all-time high. With LitVM, DeFi will also launch on Litecoin in 2026. Is this the beginning of a new supply squeeze or just a short-term hype? Let's analyze all the data together. Hi, I'm Marius from 10x Invest. And today, let's take a look together at the latest news about Litecoin. Together, we'll talk about LitVM. As an EVM-compatible Layer-2, then MWEB with 90% adoption and institutional accumulation of over 1 million Litecoin. And at the end, as always, a chart analysis with clear price zones. The central question, however, is Litecoin facing a new structural super squeeze? LitVM brings Ethereum to Litecoin. In 2026, Litecoin will be technologically repositioned. With LitVM, an EVM-compatible Layer-2 solution is being launched. What does that mean? Ethereum's smart contracts will run on Litecoin via Polygon and the AGG layer, and via Bitcoin OS, meaning also cross-chain swaps between Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. And the special thing is, it's without traditional bridges. That naturally reduces risks and increases liquidity. And that actually makes Litecoin DeFi capable. At the same time, Mimblewimble extension blocks are reaching 90% adoption. The MWEB enables private transactions and ultimately integrates DeFi structures. That's rare. Privacy plus compliance plus DeFi in one setup. At the same time, the hash rate is rising, 3.34 pH per second, an all-time high. That signals security, and the long-term commitment of the miners is still there. Technologically, by 2026, Litecoin will not only be perceived as a payment coin, but ultimately as interoperable infrastructure. But technology alone is not enough. Let's take a look at the capital flows. Institution, Horton, Litecoin. This is where it gets interesting. Luxfolio is pursuing a goal of 1 million Litecoin in the treasury, a volume of around $73 million. Maypharma already holds 929,000 Litecoin with a capital volume of $110 million. That is strategic accumulation, not just short-term trading. In addition, Litecoin is considered a regulatory commodity, meaning CFTC status, which creates clarity here. This opens the doors for ETF structures and institutional products. At the same time, payment rails, liquidity services, and self-custodial wallets are booming. Over 105.9 million Litecoin transfers per day. If the supply is tied up here and demand rises at the same time, then a classic supply situation arises, supply squeeze. And this is not a meme, but rather a market mechanic. But the question now is, does the chart confirm the theory? Let's move on to the chart analysis of Litecoin. Yes, but let's start together with the analysis of the Litecoin chart. Let's start right at the very beginning. Litecoin has been on the market for a very long time now. And as you can see here, the beginning was extreme when you look at this. 11,000% at the top, 13,000% was already quite something. In any case, the last top was at 414 US dollars. Then, from that specific point on, the value dropped quite massively. At the current time, it has gone down by almost 86% from its peak. But now let's take a look at the current situation. What does it look like at the moment? Yes, we've had smaller increases here from time to time. Here it went down. A green dot was also formed here by the Zinix indicator. After that, that was roughly here. Afterwards, it went up by 190%. Up here, the indicator formed a red dot because this was an overbought area. So the risk that this was ultimately a local or even the top was extremely high. Then the red one was formed there, and from then on, if you take a look, it went down to this point. Down there, 56% down. If you look at it, almost 60%. But what does it look like at the moment? Right now, we've also seen another sell-off here, and several green dots have formed here as well, which indicates a bottoming process, especially down here in this area. This actually looks pretty good here. Here, as mentioned, a green dot was formed in an ultimately oversold zone. If you take a look at it, roughly around here, And after that, we also went up by 26%. So what does it look like right now? As you can see, the 10x indicator has formed a small green dot, which means there could potentially be a bullish trend reversal here. And that was actually the case. Then it moved upwards. And what does the situation look like at the moment? As we can see here, up here is more the overbought area, so in plain English, the critical area. Down here is the oversold area, so that's a more interesting area. And we're slowly moving further and further upwards. We haven't quite reached the top yet, but we're slowly entering a critical phase where, in the past, this has repeatedly led to corrections. So here you really have to, right now you need to be a bit more cautious. So the question now is, would I buy Litecoin at this point? Would I wait? What would I actually do? At the moment, I would actually wait because we're entering the overbought zone here. This could indicate a correction. And if it goes down again, if the price gets sold off and we enter oversold zones, and perhaps a big green dot appears on the 10x indicator, then I will analyze the chart more closely in order to possibly look for a good entry point for myself. Because as I said, I don't rely on hype or on anything like FOMO, or when everyone on social media is saying, now the altcoin season is coming. Instead, I rely only on numbers, data, facts, without FOMO, without FUD. And if you want to use the indicator yourself for your personal analyses, you can get it. On the one hand, in my 10x Elite, which is basically the complete program that I offer, or you can also check out the indicator separately. And if you say TradingView isn't for me, it's all too complicated, then with the 10x indicator, there's also a simple alert on Telegram. But if, in this case with Bitcoin, a large green dot appears or a large red dot appears, in other words, if we are oversold or overbought, or if a bearish or bullish trend reversal potential, let's say, is indicated. You can find everything else in the video description. And now let's get to the conclusion about Litecoin. By 2026, Litecoin is no longer just an older payment token. LitVM brings smart contracts, MWEB brings privacy, and the hashrate signals security. Institutions are accumulating over 1 million Litecoin. The community status brings regulatory clarity. This is currently a structurally and strategically strong combination, and a supply squeeze could develop. But of course, it also depends a bit on how strong the capital inflows continue to be. But the fundamentals are stronger than many people think. If you want data-driven analyses without hype or emotion, then subscribe to my channel now and feel free to check out the next video. By the way, here I have fully analyzed Litecoin, with price scenarios up to 2030. Enjoy, here's the video. Thanks for watching and see you in a moment.